Hello and welcome to Best in Heritage. My name is Kevin McLean, speaking to you from Blackfoot Territory in Southern Alberta, Canada. My guests are Xander Yeaman, Curator of Curating Discomfort at the Huntarian, and Steph Skolton, Director of the Huntarian. Today, they will be sharing on their institution's Curating Discomfort, Challenging Historical Power Dynamics project, perhaps better defined as a program as it's ongoing. And congrats to you both on your more recent funding and the project's extension efforts, which were recently awarded a Museums Change Lives Award by the UK Museums Association. Welcome, Xander and Steph. Congratulations to you both on this career high achievement. I want to say how important it is to the broader culture and heritage industry to have inspiring folks like yourselves to look to as examples of leadership. This project subject matter may be the single most important thing for us all to engage with and act on, lest we become, or perhaps we already are, irrelevant to today's society. So maybe you can start by briefly describing the Huntarian and Curating Discomfort project.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Kevin. Thank you, Best in Heritage, for inviting us to be part of this. I'm Steph Skolton. I'm the Dutch director of the Huntarian, and the Huntarian is the oldest public museum in Scotland and the largest university museum in Scotland. It was founded in 1807 on the bequest of William Hunter, a medical doctor, Scots, who became very successful in London, he left his collection and money to the university to build a museum that opened in 1807 in downtown Glasgow. The museum moved once, the university moved, and so did the museum in 1870. That's where it still is, in the west end of Glasgow in Scotland, where we operate a museum, an art gallery, a zoology museum, and an anatomy museum. And some time ago, we started to consider the discomfort in our collection. That's where Xander comes in.
Yes, thank you, Steph, and thank you, Kevin, for inviting us along today. Yes, Curating Discomfort for me was very much about the work that I had been doing for over a decade, where, we're targeting museum and culture and heritage sites, particularly from my background as a human rights and anti-racist activist. And I worked for an organisation called the Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, which is a strategic anti-racist organisation based in Glasgow but Scottish-wide. And we coordinated a programme of events every year in October for Black History Month in Scotland. And we used that as a kind of campaign tool to ensure that Black history was part of Scotland's history and wasn't seen as a separate entity in itself, and not only something that we coordinated 1 month of the year, but was something that was 12 months and 365 days of the year. And seeing the advertisement for the project that was set up by the Huntarian Curating Discomfort, I thought it was an opportunity that I had to take.
Thank you. So what was the history of the award-winning Curating Discomfort project, its rationale, its objectives, its aims?
I think we need to go back to 2018, which was the 300th birthday of William Hunter, our founder. On that occasion, we curated a very large exhibition that looked back at that founding collection of and the founding person. And it was an exhibition that also traveled to Yale, to the Center for British Art, later on. But while we were doing that exhibition, and there's a very large book that goes with it, I think we looked at the collection with new eyes, 21st century eyes, in ways that we realized there were so many things in that collection that are, well, let's say, difficult, raising questions, problematic, in a number of different ways. I mean, Hunter was a medical doctor and an anatomist, so there's lots of human remains, for instance, in that collection. And his specialty, his scientific discipline was around human pregnancy. We have lots of materials that relate to women's bodies, for instance, and working on that body, that collection. Body is the wrong word in this context, I would say. Working on that collection, we sense that there's lots of things there that we need to question. And when we, the morning after we opened the exhibition in early 2018, we were walking around with some colleagues from the Wellcome collection from London, who'd come up for the private view, and we were kind of contemplating, and we spoke about the discomfort that we felt around a whole range of materials in that collection. And at some point, I think I literally said that we should curate that, do a museum thing with that discomfort. And that's how the title was, kind of came about. But by the time that we had some money, we had to fundraise, get some grants for it. We were in the middle of Black Lives Matter. And so it was that summer. So we advertised, and Zandra came. And because of I think the combination of what was going on in society and Zandra's expertise and personality, it became very strongly focused on anti-racism.
Yeah, I think for me, what was very interesting was I had been looking for an institution that would actually take me on to kind of do the work that I really wanted to do, because I had been pushing this agenda within museums for such a long time, and they would never go far enough. And it was always very much outward facing. Whereas for this kind of work, you also, as well as the outward facing, you have to do the inward looking too, and you have to kind of do it together. And so when I saw what the Hunterian was doing, I did apply for the post. And I was fortunate enough to get an interview and express what I would do with that project, because I felt that what they had advertised for wasn't really what they wanted to do. I felt that they wanted to go further than what the project was, and they were brave enough to do that, which I think is a real testament to the Hunterian. But also the Hunterian is a scholarly museum, so that is another added bonus, because you can experiment and use it as a scholarly place for discourse around contested histories, contested collections. So I think it was a perfect fit.
I think when we framed the project, I don't think we had a full understanding ourselves of what it could do. And, I think it's all the circumstances together and the personalities that really, gave it a massive push. And I think what Zandra was saying is really important. Most of that project is behind the scenes, is working within our organization, is, asking ourselves hard questions, educate ourselves, go through the discomfort also that Zandra puts us through in a way, because she's possibly the only museum professional who actually, as a job, has the mandate to make everybody uncomfortable around her, including her superiors. So that job title is, it's a really important thing.
But I think what's very important, and as Steph says, it was advertised as a project, and I have always felt this work is not a project, because a project has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I did come in, and the activist and campaigner in me, bringing those skills without fully disclosing that, I guess, but recognising I could see further ahead, if that makes sense. And I guess that was something that I suppose I brought to the table. But I specifically asked for the title Curator of Discomfort. And that in itself was the first experience of discomfort, because curators, that title curator, has a particular status within museums. So immediately I was playing around with the power dynamic. But also what I think is important is that title ensures, because I am used to, in my practice as an activist, walking into hostile environments. That's what happens. So what was interesting about that title, it enabled me to have uncomfortable conversations without the same hostility that people expect to feel uncomfortable. So therefore they're not so hostile because there's an expectation. And then they start to realize, actually, this isn't as uncomfortable as I thought it was going to be. And I also think there's another layer to it, because that title curators are known for taking care or being keepers of objects. And I like to think that my role really is about supporting people. Because without people, museums would be empty. Everybody always says it's objects that would make museums empty. Actually, it's people. And that's both our audiences and the people who work within the museum sector. So I guess I curate people more than I do objects through their discomfort.
And I do think we realized, even when we wrote the project, that this would only be a first step on a journey that would require a very long-term commitment. So in parallel, we rewrote our strategy, a 5-year strategy, 21-25, which basically has this anti-racist work, equality work at its heart. And we know that beyond those 5 years, there will still be much to do.
There's so much going on right now. I'm thinking about Zandra's comments and how the role of curator, I think, would be elevating other voices, centering others, as opposed to be it ourselves. And, for those people that traditionally have been curators, that's been the expectation, I think, by society of them, is that they're centering themselves. They're the narrator. They're the knowledge keeper. So it's pretty kind of revolutionary, I guess, for some to kind of make that change. So,
but I also think it's really important to acknowledge and value the knowledge and expertise of curators. And that's another thing about Creating Discomfort that I think is key. It's about collaboration and, acknowledging and recognizing that our knowledge and experience comes from different places. And when we collaborate and bring those together, we can actually create something which I think is pretty wonderful.
So what do you think were the qualities and innovations that impressed the Museum Association's award jury?
Well, according to the blurb on their own website, and that's what they told us, it is about using institutional discomfort as a catalyst for meaningful change, and not simply in the displays, but across the whole organization. And I think that is the essence, that it's, so yes, we've created a display, but that was not the point of the project. But it, allows, it's great because it allows us to discuss this with our audiences. It's a very visible thing. But really, it is about all the processes behind the scenes. So including how do we produce actually that knowledge? How do we produce? How do we select? How do the power dynamics work?
But what I think is really important is what Steph said, we're still doing the work. It is uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable for all of us. But you can't do this work without the backing of leadership, without the backing of your colleagues. I always get centered in this work. And no, we won't dispute that absolutely I brought something to the table, but we wouldn't be achieving what we're achieving without the proper collaboration of the whole team.
So next question, which I'm really, really interested in, is where the Huntarian embarked on this intervention and the strategic plan, when it did, how it did. And not everyone else in the industry has been doing or has done what you've done. What is it about the Huntarian? Is it the institutional culture, the staff? Because maybe it's in Glasgow or it's in Scotland as opposed to somewhere else in the UK, that it happened there when it did, and with this level of ongoing success?
Well, success is to be argued with. Again, we're on a journey. And arguably it's also still early days. But I think the one thing Sandra mentioned already, this is a university museum. So we don't have the politics of national museums. We don't have the funding issues of local authority museums. We have so we have a lot of mind space in a sense. We're an experiment. We can experiment. We can fail in ways that many other museums cannot. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I also think there's a few other things like the University of Glasgow conducting the research into past endowments that still existed off the back of enslaved African people. And when I say that, what I mean is the people who made their money through the enslavement of African people and what they put that money into. And
Yes.
some of that ended up at the University of Glasgow. So I think that was something. Also, the murder by the police of George Floyd no doubt actually had a real impact on
Yes.
people kind of wakening up to racism's existence in Scotland. But also, we have been doing, many of us have been campaigning for such a long time and had a lot of public conversations in Glasgow in particular, but Scotland-wide. So I think we were really ready for it. I think all these things coming together. So
You're absolutely right. The institutional context, the university has been, it's been pretty progressive in its own agenda. And they were the first university in the UK, possibly in the world, who researched the way they profited from slavery in financial terms.
So since you embarked on, I'm going to call it a program because that's what it feels like.
Yes.
Is there something that you've found that's been especially challenging or difficult?
Well, all of it.
time.
All of it. Yeah.
It's trying to fit so much in. The intervention that you see, the output was 6 months, which is a real short time to pull something that you're doing co-productively. So time is always a kind of enemy, isn't it, when you want to achieve something? But I suppose when you properly collaborate, that's why you can do something, that people like, I guess, because there's so many people involved in the implementing of that and in the narratives and the ideas behind it. So I think that's the success of that. But that's probably one of the things I'm really recognising working in the museum sector is there's just never enough time.
Yeah, I must say, overall, it's been a positive, very positive experience, both in the way, we've been able to do it, the way people came on board in our organization and outside our organization. We expected a lot more negative feedback, which has been mostly absent. So that says something maybe about how society is changing as well. But at the same time, it is really difficult. Literally a steep learning curve for everybody involved, including myself. And but definitely something I do not want to unlearn. Mm-hmm. It's really been it's really invigorated me. I'm like, let's say, a mature museum professional. It's the kind way to say it. Basically saying I'm an old guy, and this has been really, really given me a lot of energy. It's really empowering.
I think another thing, just picking up on what Steph said as well, when I came, I did ask the Hunterian, look, I don't want to just work internally with the Hunterian staff. I want to work with other museum professionals across Scotland, because it's not about, I am, an anti-racist activist. So for it just to work in one place doesn't suit me. It has to be, it's a societal issue, you know, systemic racism is a societal issue in Scotland. So what I also really liked was the Huntarian enabling me to work with external colleagues and build relationships with them. So I think that also kind of helped with what we were doing. So although we were quiet about it, i.e. we weren't putting it all over social media or you know, constantly broadcasting about it, people in the sector around Scotland who were involved knew what was happening because they were involved in it. So, you know, in some of the internal processes. So I think that actually helped, you know, how now that we're reflecting a year down the line of that part of the work being finished, that when you reflect on it, I think that might have had a positive impact on other people in the sector sort of knowing what we were doing.
I think, I mean, you're touching on something really important, I think, there, that, you know, this was not a project to show like how great we are, you know, how woke we are or whatever we are, because, I mean, it's kind of embarrassing that, you know, it's 2023 now that we have to do this work. You know, it's there's a video in the intervention in the museum that kind of lays out that it's 50 years of equality legislation in Scotland, and we're still talking about it. So I don't think we felt, and that's also why it's kind of weird to get an award for it. You know, it feels, I don't know, you know, it's really nice to have the recognition of your colleagues, obviously, but it's not necessarily something to celebrate, I feel, because, you know, we should have done this a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking of more things to ask you. It'd probably take 4 hours or longer to get through all the things I'm thinking about. But with Zandra's commentary on the social media and continually posting what you're doing, and me just thinking that potentially that could be performative again, and the museum, it's centering itself as opposed to others. Yeah, and Steph, with the recognition, I mean, the one thing I would say is that I'm just really grateful, because I think we need to see, or it helps the industry to see folks that are out there doing this work to inspire others. So what change in community perception or engagement have you witnessed since the intervention and the strategic plan?
Well, really, that's for the long haul. So I think, you know, there's definitely early gains. I mean, there's a group of people around us now involved with the museum that you know, have indicated that they want to keep on working with us, at least for the time being, which is great. Because, I mean, quite often, I mean, many of these projects, you know, end in, you know, not necessarily on good terms, for all kinds of reasons. So I'm really, really pleased with that. I think if you look at our program, the beginning of this month, so the 1st of April, we reopened our art gallery where we've rehung our collection, made different selections, different interpretation done by our art curators. And you know, it's really a breath of fresh air, because it takes on board, you know, the learning that we've been able to do and apply that to an art collection that is, you know, very, in many ways, very traditional. And so you see it kind of pervading all our work, which is exactly the point.
Yeah, I would agree. And I suppose it's a year down the line now since the intervention's been put in place, just over a year. So it really is time to do proper evaluation. And this is something that I've always argued within the museum sector, is a project and the funding ends and you're expected to evaluate. But how can you evaluate when actually it's just in place? You've got to give audiences and others time to visit and give us the feedback that we need. So what's been really good is the feedback from a broad section of communities, locally, nationally and globally. So we're recording all that, and it's been very positive. Also, when we're seeing the influence of this work has across the sector, again, locally, nationally, and globally, I think our day-to-day within the Huntarian and in the University of Glasgow, the conversations we're having, the changes that we're seeing, some are tangible and some are not so tangible. I wouldn't have stayed if I didn't think that the Huntarian believed in this work. And I wouldn't have stayed if I was in a very hostile environment. So I think that's a testament to it. And just even the people of colour from around the UK who reach out, who feel empowered by this work and supported and able to open up the conversations within their own institutions without feeling so isolated. Yeah. But I always add a caveat to that. We cannot sit back and think that's the job done, because it's not. We at the Huntarian are having to go to the next level. You talk about the strategic planning, and if you look at that, it's very value-based. So it's about us instilling those values, not only for communities externally who come in and work with us, but also the community internally. And I think that's an area that museums find quite difficult when they think about that word community. Who do they mean by community, and have they thought about the community internally? Ensuring that we continue to support and provide the resources to enable staff to continue with this work.
So if there was something you wanted other cultural institutions to adopt or consider addressing museums' roles in colonialism and white supremacy, what would it be and why?
Again, so much to say around that, but a very simple response to that is to have an open mind and to be brave.
No tick boxing.
No tick boxing.
Really wanting to do the work.
And being honest about, this is hard, but you know what, we'll push through, we'll and not trying to think that the change will come in a hurry, because it doesn't. And having short-term projects isn't going to achieve it. It's like what you said, Kevin, that you picked up from Steph. It's like having a programme, and you might, as part of that programme, you might apply for funding that will take you to the first step of it. And then, but even when you're in that project, remembering that the end is not the end. It's the end of that funding stream, but it's to carry on to the next level. So I suppose that's something that I think would help and enable people to sustain this work. Would you agree, Steph? That's something that I think's helped us, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's I think wanting to make this a structural part of what we do as museums. I think that's and then realize you need different strategies to apply that depending on the place where you are, depending on the institution that you are. But yeah, it's got to be there. You can't be a museum in 2023, and not do that.
So that's the end of my questions. I just want to make sure that there wasn't something important that you wanted to say or share that I didn't ask the right question to solicit that response.
I suppose there's one thing that I would say that we never really talked about, because we just touched on community. At the core of this work is people, not objects. And I think that's what's really important. The objects are a springboard, a point of departure in some ways, to ensure that we can bring people and stories and cultures and history alive. And I think that's important, is at all stages, is about people, isn't it? Really?
we haven't actually really, we've not spent any time, which is probably good, on, the actual project, the kind of like, what did we really do and how did it work, the mechanics of it. But what I like, and you can see behind Sandra on the Zoom, is it's literally the public bit of it is literally a layer on top of things that were already there. And I think that's a lot of the debate in definitely in Britain is about taking away from history, changing history. This is literally, it adds history, other layers of meaning to the things that we already value.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for giving up part of your day to share time with us. It is a genuine privilege to be in this space with you. And I wish you the best in your work. Because it is so very important. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.